Let's see what's going on by a country approach. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm not really entirely certain how I'm going to count the countries. Whose rules am I going to use to determine what constitutes an independent recognized nation? And even if I did that, there's so many of them, and everybody is getting involved in blockchain. Well, we don't have time to do this. So for example, just to kind of give you an idea of what's happening, I've got some buddies over at Canaccord Genuity, which is the Global Wealth Management Forum, and they send me regular updates. So last night, I'm checking my emails before I go to bed, and I get this update from Canaccord Genuity, and it's basically the macro update on blockchain and crypto. I'm just going to read you some of the headlines that came in. China signs agreement with Hong Kong Central Bank for blockchain push. Okay, not too surprising. China is a huge voice in the space. The next one says, Coca-Cola supply chain firm expands blockchain effort to 70 partners. UN claims Hong Kong blockchain firm is North Korean laundering sham. Volvo cars to trace battery cobalt using blockchain technology. Azerbaijan to adopt blockchain-based ID system in 2020. That one really caught my attention. I'm really into blockchain for ID, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Turkey to finish testing blockchain-based digital currency by end of 2020. And Fujitsu partners, Swiss startup, for blockchain rice trading. And this is my dilemma, how to focus. So I thought, well, maybe I can come at this by industry. I even knew where to start, right? Because you heard about all those committees I sit on with the Florida Bar Association. Well, the state of Florida has finally decided to pay attention to what's going on in the blockchain world, and they reached out and said, hey, can you summarize a list of active blockchain use cases among industries? And I said, I can. I just got this great thing in my Oxford FinTech class, and so I went through all 55 of them, and I updated this list. If any of you want the updated list with active hyperlinks, that would be great. I'd be happy to share that with you. Come find me after, except this would only leave me 32 seconds to discuss this by industry. So I had to kill that idea too. And so here is where I landed. I decided, right, that we could take a more functional approach to identifying those regulations that are either encouraging or discouraging industry adoption efforts. I have condensed it into a four-themed system to analyzing what I think is going to happen with the blockchain regulatory landscape in 2020 and beyond. So first, we're going to talk about blockchain adoption in financial technology. While big banks were the very first to decry blockchain because the use of digital currencies challenged the traditional banking revenue model, banks are actually now driving blockchain adoption around the world. Second, we're going to explore the concept of government-ordained identity and how blockchain is shaping the definition of who you are and what you can accomplish over the course of your lifetime. I've chosen to explore this theme secondary to fintech because access to banking and financial services is a big part of this analysis. Third, smart contracts is much more broad because it addresses how self-executing contracts stored on a blockchain introduce radical changes to supply line management and the management of transactions that, as you saw earlier, impacts every global industry, large and small. And fourth, we're going to examine the regulatory changes in big data management and its wealthier cousin, data analytics. Because after all, at its heart, Blockchain is a network-based data management system providing the best in data privacy and security tools that are available in commercial markets today. So the impact of blockchain on financial technology can best be examined within 5 principal financial activities. Number 1, payment rails. 2 is accessing value that has been locked away in hard assets through the process of tokenization on a blockchain. 3rd is savings and investments, or getting a line of credit. And 5, crowdsourcing everything imaginable, from funding and lending to the more abstract, like information. But payment rails, or how to move money around between businesses, people, and accounts, is the principal driver of fintech development, and it has received the most backlash from the world's regulators. And for this reason, we're going to spend more of our time on this particular element of the financial activities. Western Union is the world's largest provider of cross-border payments, generating $4 billion in revenues from remittances alone each year. But there is some argument over how much money big banks are generating from this activity. JP Morgan Chase is the world's 2nd largest bank outside of China, and it reports only 0.5% of its consumer bank revenue comes from money transfers. Yet a recent internal memo that was leaked out of Santander demonstrates their money transfer revenue at 10% of their overall profits, and they charge 6 times more than their rival, TransferWise. But those numbers have since been challenged. Nevertheless, the traditional banking model is built on cross-subsidization, and new entrants have the ability to attack profitable banking divisions by unbundling their services. Nowhere else has this challenge been more explored than in the United Kingdom. In the last 5 years, fintech startups like Monzo, Starling, and Atom Bank have completely revolutionized the United Kingdom's banking sectors. These online-only digital banks have increased pressure on existing industry giants, while demand for innovative financial products among millennials has grown. Recognizing the importance of supporting innovation for financial services and the challenges with the time and cost involved to obtain a banking license, the United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority developed a solution, and they called it a fintech regulatory sandbox. A fintech sandbox is a framework that's created by financial regulators to allow smaller scale live testing of new financial products using real customers, but without requiring a full regulatory license. This FCA sandbox model of financial innovation has proven so successful that 90% of participating companies go on to market. So consequently, other nations implementing their own sandboxes around the world include Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, Singapore, and South Korea. Noticeably, the United States is absent from that list. Latin America and the Caribbean also are part of the fintech transformation. They have more than 700 platforms introduced throughout the region, with most located in Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and Chile. Through regional technical cooperation, the governments of several Latin American nations are currently developing policy framework for alternative finance and regulatory sandboxes. In addition to payment solutions, fintech companies throughout LATAM are also responding to gaps and asymmetries that continue to affect the allocation of credit, mainly to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. As a result, the alternative finance market in LATAM has saw triple growth in 2016 as compared to 2015. And while this is great news, the best is yet to come. A new company called Aurochs has laid the groundwork to initiate a globally compliant digital securities exchange headquartered in Suriname. The company also endeavors to create new financial instruments, a modern government bond market, and an online marketplace modeled after China's Alibaba, together with an integrated mobile payment solution similar to Alipay. According to Chief Executive Maya Parvo, the goal is to position LATAM as the world leader in fully compliant digital securities and fintech solutions by selecting, integrating, and further developing the best practices from around the world. And finally, within the past year, the United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority has partnered together with 46 other financial authorities from countries around the world, central banks, and international organizations. Finally, including, as of last week, the 4 primary U.S. regulatory bodies, and together they have formed the Global Financial Innovation Network to create a cross-border sandbox that will facilitate cooperation between financial service regulators on matters of innovation. Documentation that establishes one's legal identity is the gateway to modern life. Without legal proof of your identity, you can't vote, you can't drive, you can't open a bank account, and you absolutely cannot access government services. Good luck getting into the bar. According to the World Bank, more than 1 billion people have no way to prove their identity, and among them are some 25 million refugees. And while refugees protected by the 1951 UN Refugee Convention are issued identity and travel documents by their host nations, these travel documents are printed on a piece of paper much like this, and they are often forgotten, lost, destroyed, and in many cases, they're stolen. The value of storing identities on the blockchain extends both to the recipients and to their respective governments. Blockchain registered identities that are tied to biometrics create an indestructible record traceable only to you. By using banking applications built on the blockchain, a person's financial transactions recorded on that chain build a credit history over time, serving as a form of identity for later use, essentially creating the trust that that person needs in order to interact with the world without having to depend on a centralized authority to vouch for them. Within this structure, governments and organizations that provide funds and services can better track spending, detect fraud and unauthorized use, and avoid paying transaction fees. Further, expenditures can be directly audited, thereby reducing funds lost to corruption, and it can also streamline government services that are typically plagued by gaps or overlaps in the services that they provide. In 2016, the United Nations World Food Program launched the Building Blocks blockchain in the country of Jordan. An Ethereum-based private blockchain, this program has successfully registered over 100,000 Syrian refugees using biometric authentication that enables users to make cash transfers for food and other purchases using retina scans, saving the World Food Program up to $150,000 each month and bank transaction fees alone, this program is now under expansion to cover all refugees with a digital ID wallet fully accessible via smartphone that is specifically designed to improve refugee transactional mobility. While placing a digital ID in a government-operated private blockchain does question the integrity of this project's decentralization and its applicability beyond financial savings, it does prove the feasibility of the concept. And now, this project has been successfully repeated in multiple refugee camps around the world. While there are a number of identity-based blockchains in development, one notable such project is the ID 2020 Alliance. This is a collaboration of public and private sector giants, including Accenture, Microsoft, Hyperledger, the Rockefeller Foundation, UN agencies, and other leading nonprofits. This alliance is committing to addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals to provide a digital identity to more than 1 billion people who have none. But this can be a dangerous proposition for a government to have that kind of control over a person's identity. As aptly pointed out by my professor, David Schreier, in a conversation I had with him during my Oxford FinTech lab, genocide is about identity. For this reason, identity solutions must be designed so that the individual retains total control over who gets access to what information. For example, in a conference that I spoke at about 3 weeks ago in Orlando, I talked to a gentleman whose daughter was actually stalked by a bartender. You may have seen this example that a previous speaker put up, and I was shocked because this is like literally the conversation that I just had with this gentleman. She wanted to order a glass of wine, so she had to flash her ID to show that she was over 21. The bartender saw her address on her ID, and he stalked her all the way home, and she had to call the police. If identity was self-sovereign, controlled by you, it can preserve the sanctity of your privacy while still enabling you to access the world. And while smaller projects like the World Food Program has successfully proven that the concept works on a functional level, larger initiatives are currently underway with the World Wide Web Consortium and the Sovereign Alliance to develop standardized protocols for decentralized identifiers for the creation of systems of verifiable decentralized digital ID to be deployed by nations. So we've talked a little bit about smart contracts earlier today. We've talked a lot about how Bitcoin and blockchain were one and the same first generation blockchain. Their blockchain was the application, that being Bitcoin. But then 5 years later, which is about 5 years past from now, we had the advent of Ethereum. The blockchain made this phenomenal leap. You see, Ethereum's programming language called Solidity was developed so that common, legally enforceable contracts, like the kinds I write for my clients, could be translated into programming code and then written up to a blockchain for self-execution and self-enforcement. In fact, many of us regularly use smart contracts already. For example, if you have any of your recurring bills set to auto-pay on a certain date of the month, like your electric bill or maybe your rent or your phone bill, that is a kind of smart contract. You identify the parties, you set the terms of payment, and then you walk away, fully trusting that the system will deduct the amount owed from your account on a date certain. It's one and done. Since Ethereum's launch 5 years ago, there has been a great deal of exploration on how this concept can be applied with a much broader stroke to all industries imaginable, like what we saw on the earlier slide on the 55 industries that CD Insights reported on. But what most industries have in common is that they generate siloed information. And this makes it really difficult to automate or even streamline interaction with other industry participants. For example, in the food industry, farmers, producers, and transporters all use different systems for record keeping, with some operating on paper, others in locally managed IT infrastructure, and still others are operating in the cloud. But no one system is really talking to anybody else's system, and then the same problem is being repeated throughout the global trade industry, in government agencies, and in insurance and healthcare networks, and in real estate. As reported by the joint efforts of IBM and the global shipping giant Maersk, a recent test of shipping flowers from Kenya to Rotterdam resulted in a stack of nearly 200 communications, a problem that blockchain is especially equipped to resolve. However, as each of these industries implicates a growing global reach, they require an increasingly global solution. Consequently, while private companies are producing blockchain-based solutions to address smaller, regional problems, larger global consortiums are organizing with greater participation from stakeholders around the world to develop these international standards and protocols per industry for then recommendation for the adoptions by individual nations. And this brings me back to the principal question. What can we expect from our regulators in the coming years about the broader issue of smart contracts? Well, businesses and governments all over the earth are working to integrate blockchains to track records and manage supply lines. For example, Dubai aims to be the very first government to be entirely managed on a blockchain. Estonia has built a digital society offering e-citizenship on a blockchain. In Latin America, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture maintains 34 offices dedicated to helping farmers implement blockchain and other technologies to support sustainable farming. And in the United States, individual states are actively working to implement blockchains for corporate record keeping, taxation, and property records management. The U.S. federal government, however, continues to make it extremely challenging to tokenize assets by attaching securities treatment by default to nearly every effort to build a utility into an existing asset through tokenization on a blockchain. Nevertheless, certain states like Wyoming have recently passed comprehensive legislation providing clear rules on how to manage digital securities offerings, and other states are following suit. However, integrating smart contracts into existing or prospective business processes does introduce new problems. For instance, what happens when the data entered for a smart contract is entered wrong? And then the contract is uploaded for auto execution on a blockchain. How do you change the terms when the data is immutable, right? Because immutability is a fundamental property of a blockchain. Or how do you stop a smart contract from executing once it's been put in motion without killing the whole blockchain? These are questions that legal authorities and regulators are just now starting to ask. But we don't understand enough about blockchain yet, or all that blockchain can do, its strengths and its weaknesses as yet unexploited. It's tough to come up with reliable answers just now. but as recently pointed out in a poignant article from the Harvard Business Review, the era of move fast and break things is over. Minimum viable products must be replaced by minimum virtuous products that assess the overall social impact of their intentions and that they build in protections against potential harms. If you recall, big data is the last of our 4 blockchain themes for today, and it's actually my favorite. I love talking about big data and related analytics tools. Blockchain, at its heart, is nothing more than a super cool data management system. It's like a wild update on MySQL, and it's what we can do with all that data that's so exciting. On the internet, Nobody Knows You're a Dog is from a famous cartoon that is turned into a much bigger statement about personal anonymity and data integrity on the internet. We now have these digital identities that are literal extensions of our physical selves, and yet they are inextricably interlinked. In the last 3 years, more than 1 billion personal records were released in the data hacks of Marriott, Equifax, and Adult Friend Finder alone. And I'm only talking about the 3 big ones. So essentially, if you're alive, your identity has been hacked and it's been sold on the dark web. So how can banks, employers, health insurers, or anyone for that matter, be sure you are who you say you are? As explained in a blueprint for digital identity by the World Economic Forum, in an increasingly borderless and digital world, identity is the frontier of privacy and security, where the very nature of entities is what allows them to complete some transactions and then be denied from completing others. And it is this philosophy that is driving governments, academics, organizations, and multinational corporations to define international standards and protocols for determining verifiable identity and associated transactions on a blockchain network. New York Times best-selling author and big data analyst Cathy O'Neil, of whom I'm a giant fan, she teaches that a lot can go wrong when people put blind faith in big data. Algorithms sort winners and they sort losers, where the winners get the job interview, the winners get the credit card offer, and the winners get the better insurance rate. Algorithms are opinions embedded in code, and they may not be objective, they might not be true, and they might not even be scientific. To build an algorithm, you need data from the past, and you need a definition of success. Consequently, algorithms repeat our past patterns, and they automate the status quo, which is great if we have a perfect world, but we don't. So, the solution then is that we have got to interrogate our algorithms and their data for fairness. But most algorithms are hidden by trade secret protections that are enforced by corporate and political interests. The Chinese social credit system is the best example of how algorithms deployed on big data can build digital dictatorships, creating micro-level social controls on the daily lives of its 1.4 billion citizens. Over 200 million closed caption cameras have been installed around China to capture, identify, and score the behavior of all Chinese. If you behave, your score goes up. And the government rewards you with job promotions, discounted travel tickets, and other perks. And as you might expect, if you misbehave, your score goes down. And the government finds interesting ways to lock you out of society. China is now selling this technology around the world, including to Venezuela. Meanwhile, you might be surprised to learn that in the United States, a different sort of digital dictatorship is also emerging, where corporate interests controlling social media and other news platforms censor speech that an algorithm independently determines violates community guidelines, a behavior which has resulted in the near total silence of conservative voices. What you can expect regulators to do in the coming years is to deploy these black box algorithms and related technologies to expand social controls. And this behavior will continue to proliferate without counteractive measures. And finally, let's talk about what quantum computing means for the future of blockchain. You may have recently heard that Google has achieved quantum supremacy. If true, does this mean that quantum computing is a threat to the cryptographic security employed by blockchains? Globally recognized cryptography and blockchain expert Andreas Antonopoulos explains that whether Bitcoin can safeguard against quantum computing depends on how powerful the computer is and how many qubits it has. The number of qubits that you need to break most blockchain wallets is far greater than even the wildest speculation about what the world's military intelligence agencies are developing today, or even what might be developed into the future. As quantum computing advances, Bitcoin will need to change its algorithms. Because some wallets have lost keys and can't change the signing algorithm, they will be captured by quantum computing. But because the rest of us can change our algorithms together can change our wallets together with the algorithms, quantum computing isn't as big a threat as we might think that it is. So reviewing a few of our takeaways, while not a panacea, blockchain does solve a lot of really big problems for a lot of people around the world, especially the world's bottom billion. And it is growing in influence and integration every day. Blockchain is also redefining value, restoring ancient systems of trade where people can exchange items of value directly with one another, diluting the power of central banks and the governments that support them. While we can all agree that everyone should have an identity that grants them equal access to banking and financial services that form the foundations of economic opportunity, we, the authors and the primary beneficiaries of blockchain, must be careful to insist that such an identity is protected from overreaching governments by demanding that our identities be self-sovereign. With the gradual adoption of smart contracts, all industries will experience radical change, the benefits of which include fraud-resistant transactions that are secure and auditable. Big data and what we do with it is the central theme of this fourth industrial revolution. But without data integrity, our analytics will be flawed. Black box algorithms, so called because trade secret rights are used to protect their confidentiality, often produce biased results. When we use them as the building blocks for artificial intelligence-driven decision-making, these weapons of math destruction have the power to destroy lives. Therefore, we must demand that our mathematical overlords be subject to third-party auditing in the public domain. And we must further require that the privacy and security of our digital selves be protected against unregulated quantum cryptography promulgated by autocratic, unelected multinational corporations. And finally, the growing state of government-operated microsurveillance deployed in nations around the world should cause all of us great concern. After all, why must they watch us so closely, if not to control us? But the power of a government is derived not so much from the votes granted by its constituents, but by its purse. If democratic elections and government spending were recorded on a decentralized blockchain subject to public inspection, then the citizenry would finally have a real opportunity to monitor the behavior of the elected officials and to demand honorable representation under the threat of impeachment. In conclusion, at its highest and best use, blockchain can balance the power between a government and its citizens. This is my contact information and how best to reach me. I specialize in helping companies around the world gain access to the U.S. private capital markets by providing comprehensive legal and business consulting services for the entire life cycle of an organization from idea to exit. So I encourage you to come find me after. If there's not enough time to answer questions now, I'll be available to chat with all of you. And especially, again, I am a U.S. attorney. I also do specialize in securities. So if you want to know how to access the U.S. investor market and sort of navigate the labyrinth of regulations of the Securities and Exchange Commission, I'll be happy to chat with you about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.